Hey guys, back again with another video. Review on Hollow Knight for PC right now. I think they're doing a version of this game for the Switch and actually might get a physical release, and then the PS4. And I'm pretty sure the PS4 version is supposed to come out sometime this year. And then the Switch version, I'm not sure exactly yet. But yeah, this is one of those games that came out around the time Breath of the Wild did. And I always heard like it was this amazing game. But I guess a lot of people really didn't give it a chance because of Breath of the Wild. It came out at a kind of a bad time, and in a year that's had so many fantastic games. And so the Steam sale, Steam Summer Sale happened not too long ago, and this game was on sale as a part of that. And it was $10. I think it's ordinarily like 15, which is absolutely insane considering how good this game is. And right off the bat, I'll say this game is incredible. Absolutely incredible. It is honestly, it's one of the best games of the year in a year that's already insanely packed with like great games. It's one of the best Metroidvania games I've ever played, and it's one of those games that takes a lot of influence from the Souls games and understands like the good parts of those games, especially the original Dark Souls. And the way it blends those elements with a traditional Metroidvania style experience is absolutely amazing. I was completely addicted to this game. Like, I could not put it down. It's weird, though. I did a 180 with this game. At the first few hours, I was actually not too into it. I don't know, I wasn't all that impressed with it. It has a slow beginning, and it takes a while for you to get a few new abilities and for the world to really start to make sense, and for the game to make sense. But once the game finally does click with you and you understand how everything works together, it's an amazing experience. And eventually, I ended up loving the game. And yeah, it's an incredible game that is just a must play. I know this year is already completely packed with great games, but like don't pass this one by. Pick this game up. When it comes out for PS4, especially, I think it's going to get a bigger audience there as well. Although I'm pretty sure the Steam sale already has made a lot of people take notice of this game, which is fantastic. I really hope that the studio behind this game gets all the success they deserve. Very small team that worked on this game. Team Cherry, from what I could find out, basically it's 3 people, with some other people doing like some of the music. But for the most part, it's a 3-man development team, which is absolutely staggering considering the quality of the game. And obviously, we're going to talk about why I love this game so much and where it succeeds. There are a few issues with it. This game is so close to being perfect, but there's a few design decisions that just I don't agree with that really bring the game down from like a 10 out of 10 to like a 9 or an 8.5, which is unfortunate because I feel like this game does so much right, and there's very few things it does wrong, and we'll get to those, but we'll start off with like the story of this game. Which there's not too much to say here, and this is where it takes influence from the Souls games, where you play this little like insect warrior, and you basically are in this kingdom called, I'm pretty sure it's Hollow Nest, the kind of location in this game, and you basically find yourself in this town called Dirtmouth, I think it's called. And basically the main story behind this is that there's a deep kind of almost abyss that keeps going down and down beneath the town, and all these inhabitants of this kingdom are basically kind of going down this well in search of like treasure or lifting a curse that has kind of befallen the town, and they've not come up. There's been a lot of mysterious disappearances. No one's ever returned from going down this well. So the story is kind of discovering like what happened to all these inhabitants and what's the reasoning behind this curse, and then basically finding all these NPCs throughout the world and kind of figuring out their stories. So the game is very indirect with its storytelling, similar to a Souls game. There are no cutscenes here, and all the NPCs are very mysterious, and they all have different quest lines, or at least most of them do. Basically, you'll find a lot of NPCs throughout the world, and when you meet them for the first time, they'll kind of make their home in the hub world, as it were. Like Dirtmouth, the main town, is basically your hub, and Yeah, and a lot of NPCs will return to this town, and a lot of NPCs will leave at certain points, depending on when you talk to certain NPCs and what you do with certain NPCs. And there's a lot of lore, like with the Souls game, that you'll find throughout the world, and a lot of it is really interesting. I was really into the lore and NPCs in this game. There's a lot of weird, quirky NPCs you'll find, a lot of cryptic kind of stuff that I really enjoyed. Like, for instance, finding an NPC that just is at the bottom of this really treacherous cave and just has like a lot of weird dialogue, and that's it. And then you're constantly thinking, oh, like what's this NPC for? Can I get an item later that I can maybe give to this NPC? All sorts of those kind of situations, which I just love. The game has this fantastic sense of mystery and atmosphere, and the way it tells its story is really intriguing in the way that a Souls game is. And I think it's actually a little easier to suss out details in this compared to a Souls game. And the dialogue is well written as well, and yeah, the story isn't anything, I will say it's not anything amazing, but I really like the sense of mystery to it, and then all the NPCs are really engaging, and kind of figuring out the NPCs' reasons for being in the locations that they're at, and solving some of their quest lines is always fascinating. And there's some really cool lore tidbits you'll find. I especially like the stag that you'll find, which is basically your way to fast travel around the world, where this stag, it's basically like this stag rail type thing that connects throughout the entire environment. And you get to know this stag more and more as you unlock fast travel points. And the stag's story is really fascinating and actually kind of sad as well. I don't really want to spoil it, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I really love the way the lore is handled in this game, the NPCs are handled. It takes it pretty much from Dark Souls, although a lot of games did this before Dark Souls, but I feel like Dark Souls kind of brought it back. And I don't know, I just love the way the storytelling works in this game. So moving on to gameplay, it is a traditional Metroidvania type game, but with a lot of elements from the Souls games. So unlike something like Salt and Sanctuary, which was it took a lot from Dark Souls. The customization was pretty much the same, like the combat was very similar, just in a 2D plane. It also had like this similar way of telling its story, but I don't feel like it was handled quite as well in that game. But Salt and Sanctuary is definitely more of an RPG. This game, not so much. It definitely is more of a Metroidvania than Salt and Sanctuary was, where you have a giant map that you can always refer to, and you have a bunch of areas that are all interconnected with one another, and you'll get new abilities throughout the game and new items that basically let you progress throughout the game and reach new areas. And there's a lot of backtracking. Like with any good Metroidvania, there's a lot of backtracking. Now, one of the few complaints I have with this game is the amount of backtracking. The way you go around the world, there are the stag railways, like I mentioned before. They're basically your fast travel points, and you'll find one in almost every area. I do think there should have been more of these in the game. There's actually not enough of them, and a lot of the times when you need to backtrack to a certain area, sometimes there's just not a stag location nearby, so it can take a while backtracking through like areas you've already been through. So that can be a bit of a drag, but luckily the traversal in this game is pretty fun, and the moves you have kind of speed things up, especially in the later part of the game. But yeah, it's kind of a minor complaint, because backtracking, well, let's admit it, it's a part of Metroidvania. It's a part of the DNA. It's not really a Metroidvania game without backtracking, and I like backtracking for the most part in games when it's done well. And in Hollow Knight, it's done extremely well. It's because of the world design, and this is the first point I want to get to with this game. This is the most impressive thing about this game. The world design and level design in this game is it's impeccable. It is some of the best world design I've ever seen in a game. Each area is completely distinct from the next, with so many different cool enemy types and traps and platforming challenges. And the way all the areas connect to each other makes perfect logical sense, and makes full use of the abilities that you have at your disposal. The way different shortcuts unlock throughout these environments is extremely impressive. And the way, once you understand how the world is all connected, and how each area connects to one another, it's utterly mesmerizing. There's one moment in particular in this game that I haven't felt this type of sensation since the original Dark Souls. It's a certain shortcut that I eventually unlocked. It honestly kind of blew my mind. It was like Dark Souls 1 levels of awesome. Like, I was just completely blown away at this moment. And then the game just keeps surprising you with moments like that. Like, the actual level design is really fun as well. Like, it's perfectly paced as well. The challenge is fantastic in this game as well, as far as like normal enemies and platforming go. It's just, the world design is just phenomenal. It's extremely atmospheric as well. Like, some of the deeper parts of the Hollow Nest are really dark and foreboding. And combined with the music is just absolutely stunning to behold. The map is very helpful as well. There's a weird quirks with it, and this kind of ties in with the charm system, which is one of the key like mechanics with this game. As you're seeing in the footage, it's kind of like your side-scrolling 2D Metroidvania. You get a bunch of different moves, but your main attack is basically this nail weapon that you have. It basically acts as a sword. And you basically get magic abilities as well that you saw a little bit there as well. You can bounce with your sword off like those mushroom platforms there, but you can also bounce off enemies, so it's got a DuckTales kind of thing going on there. There's only really one basic attack with like the X button, for instance, on like the 360 controller. It's your standard nail combo, but later you'll get nail arts, where you might like hold X to do a charge attack with your sword, or you can hold X and then press up or down to do another type of attack. So there's different combos and attacks you can have with your nail, which is cool. The combat is not like super complex, but it feels good. The most important thing is that it feels good, especially when you're fighting enemies. The way you hit enemies has this great feedback to it. It feels really satisfying. You do have a knockback when you get hit, which is a little off-putting at first, but it works with the game, I feel, and it's something you have to be cautious about. And enemies have knockback as well, which is cool. When you do get hit, I think it's a little, I don't know. When you do get hit in this game, it's a little overpowering. Like, it's got this really like, I don't know, it's almost hard to explain, but it feels like rough when you get hit, and it's like the rumble kicks in. And I don't know, it's a little distracting at first, but you do eventually get used to it. And there are invincibility frames after you get hit, which is good, because it could be a little, I don't know, it can be a little disorienting sometimes when you do get hit. But yeah, throughout the world you'll be getting like these nail arts. Exploration is incredibly rewarding in this game too, which I have to say, because like I was saying before, like the NPCs, it's just really rewarding to figure out these NPCs and find these NPCs and to see how they what's like required for each one. But you'll find all these new abilities and new charms, which ties into the charm system. You'll find health upgrades. You can get upgrades to increase your maximum health. And then you have your soul meter, which I guess I'll talk about the soul meter now, which is a main mechanic of this game. Anytime you get hit or attack enemies, you're building up soul, which is in the little circular icon at the top left of the screen. And what this does allow you to use your magic abilities as well as heal yourself. So if you hold B, you can use your focus ability to basically regain lost health. So there's kind of a risk-reward system here where it's very easy to get hit in this game, and if it wasn't for this soul mechanic, exploration could be pretty annoying. But basically anytime you attack enemies, you're getting your soul meter filled, so you can kind of rest up with the focus ability, which I think this is a genius mechanic. It really helps to have the pacing of the game be good, basically. Like, the pacing of the game is spectacular, because you'll never have to go back to a previous bench to like restore all your health. You can just basically, if you're low on health, it's like, oh, okay, I can either try to avoid enemies but I die one hit, or I can go and try to attack these enemies to get some soul back and then heal up, and then I can continue exploring. It's a great design decision, and it's also great with how it works with the magic as well. So you know, the magic is a lot more powerful than your weapon. So you might want to be hitting these bosses and enemies to gain your soul up, so you can use it to use your magic abilities. I mentioned benches, and that's kind of like the bonfires in this game, similar to the Souls games. When you rest at a bench, you get all your health back, but all the enemies respawn. And then, so yeah, it's got that kind of system as well from the Souls games. And for the most part, it works well. The benches aren't too spread apart. I do think they get too carried away with them before bosses. There are a lot of bosses in this game that have really nasty treks to them that take way too long. I really think they should have put some of these benches earlier, or even in a lot of cases right before the bosses, because the bosses are probably one of my major complaint with this game, and I'll talk about them a bit later, but it's especially frustrating dying on a boss over and over again and have to do this 5-minute trek through enemies every time you want to fight them again. Anyways, another thing is the way the map works in this game, which is kind of it's kind of interesting. You have to actually equip a charm to show your position on the map, which is a little. I'm not too big on that design decision. I wish it was just tied to an item, but your map doesn't actually fill out basically as you're exploring. You have to. When you reach a new area, your map is going to be completely empty. So you have to find this map NPC who kind of is like charting out the hollow nest. And when you find him, you pay him a bit of money, and then he fills out the map for you, at least of all the area that you've explored in that particular location. And then from then on, you'll basically map out the location. And then the next time you rest at a bench, everywhere you explored will be mapped out. So it kind of adds like this whole map-making element to the game that I really liked. I really liked what it added to exploration. Some people I can see being put off by this. I think it's a design decision that is going to be kind of subjective. Some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it. Personally, I actually really dug it. I thought it was a nice twist on the traditional Metroidvania map system. I mentioned charms, and that's another mechanic in this game. And this is where the customization comes in, because even though this game is not an RPG, there is a little bit of customization. You'll find a bunch of charms throughout the game that you can equip, and you'll have different charm slots. So in the beginning, you don't start with too many, but you'll unlock more slots later, and each charm takes up a certain amount of slots. Obviously, the more powerful the charm, the more slots they take up. So one charm, for instance, it's like one of the best ones in the game, will increase your max health by like 4 or 5 health containers, basically. But you won't be able to use soul to charge up your health anymore. So once you get hit, that's it. You've gotten hit, and you're not going to be able to get that health back unless you go back to a bench. So there's a lot of cool charms like that are really powerful in the right situation. So it's a really cool system where certain charms are going to be a lot better for certain bosses in certain areas. So it was always fun to kind of mess with my charms to see which ones were going to work better in certain situations. It's this one part of the game that I thought was really engaging. I wasn't into it at first, but the more charms I got, the more interesting the system became, and I did like it quite a bit. And again, it's really great for rewarding exploration when you do come across like this hidden area, and at the very end of it is this really cool charm that will help you out later. You can also upgrade your weapon. Upgrading your weapon is pretty much essential in this game if you don't want bosses to be a complete pain in the ass. So your weapon does very little damage at first, and eventually you gotta use money and then these ores that you'll find to basically upgrade your weapon at a blacksmith. Anytime you find ores that you need to upgrade your weapon, go and upgrade it. Trust me, or else you're gonna be having a hell of a time with the bosses, which I'll talk about. I guess I'll talk about them right now. Another thing I guess I should say before we move on to the bosses. The money that you see in the top left, 557 Geo. Geo is the currency in this game. It works like Souls in the Souls games. When you die, it gets left at the spot you died, and then there's a little phantom you have to fight to get your money back. And obviously there's a bunch of different merchants in the game that you can buy things at. That part of the game I liked. I thought that element worked fairly well in this game, along with like the bench mechanic that they've got as well. And there is a bank in this game that you can actually put your money in, which I liked as well. So it's not like Souls where it's completely lost. If you have a bunch of money at one time and you're afraid of you losing it, you can go to a bank and put it in there for safekeeping for a later time. Bosses, let's talk about the bosses. So as much as I love the world design, the level design, the exploration in this game, the way you upgrade your character, like again, I love almost everything about this game. The bosses are a drag for the most part. Now, the bosses themselves aren't actually the problem in this game, because for the most part, the bosses I actually think are pretty well designed. They all have very interesting character designs, and they all have very cool patterns to figure out. And they all have really cool movesets, and the arenas are often really cool, and each boss is totally different from the next. And the combat, is so satisfying that the bosses can be fun. The problem is the health on these bosses. For whatever reason, the developers of this game think that more health equals more challenge. So the bosses, almost, I'd say probably about 80% of the bosses in this game are extreme damage sponges. And I mean extreme. Like they take way too long to kill. And basically they're battles of attrition. These battles, these bosses have like about 25% more health than they should, and they go on forever. And by the time you're fighting these bosses, dodging their attacks for like 5 minutes straight, with no end in sight, they get repetitive, and they're extremely punishing. It's just a lot of these bosses are extremely fast, with very hard to predict attacks. And getting hit is just really easy in this game. It's extremely easy to get hit. And the healing doesn't really help all that much in this game either, focusing to heal, because a lot of the bosses just don't give you enough time to heal. You can maybe get off one heal before they just fucking unleash all these super fast attacks. And so it got really frustrating later in the game when the bosses just took forever to kill, where I basically had to equip certain charms to increase my strength and health, and I had to basically out DPS them. That was the only way I was going to win, because it was so punishing getting hit. You basically had to pretty much be perfect at these bosses and beat them like without getting hit, because you just don't have a whole lot of health compared to these bosses. If these bosses had like 25% health, like I was saying, then this game would be near perfect. I would like pretty much everything about it, but I gotta say, I reached a point where anytime I would reach a new boss, I'd be just like, fuck, I really don't want to be fighting a boss right now. I'd much rather be, exploring these levels. The final boss in particular is extremely egregious. It takes forever. It has so much fucking health. Its attacks are like nearly impossible to dodge. Like, it took me so many tries. And then there's the fact that you have a lot of these benches that are in really annoying spots. One boss in particular, the Soul Master, the trek to this boss was so painful. So many enemies in the way. And then it just takes forever to get to him. And then by the time you do get to him, it's like this long fucking 10-minute fight that just goes on forever, and it's a drag. All the bosses are complete slogs, and I really wish they would patch the game and make them have less health, because it's just overkill, and it's unfortunate. It really drags the game down for me. It's my major complaint with this game, other than the way the true ending is handled. Like a lot of games, this game it ratchets up the difficulty to an extreme degree for the true ending, where you have to fight remixed versions of the bosses, and of course they have further bloated HP, so they take even longer, as if the bosses weren't long enough. And then you have to go through this White Palace dungeon, which I didn't even get to because I couldn't beat these remixed bosses. But I've seen videos of it. It's basically like Super Meat Boy difficulty. It actually looks kind of fun. I would have liked to have at least tried it, but unfortunately I didn't even get to that point. And then you have the true final boss, where you have to go through the first phase of the fight every time you want to even attempt the true final boss. And the true final boss is extremely hard from what I've seen, and he's like one of the few bosses in the game that does 2 health points of damage to you, whereas pretty much everything else in the game will always do 1. So yeah, the true ending, I didn't bother. I did get around 75% completion in this game, and I thought that was pretty good. There's an insane amount of optional content in this game. It's one of my favorite things about it. It's very hard to know what exactly the critical path is for most of the game, and it's the best feeling ever when you're going through this area and you find this hidden path that brings you into this whole other location with multiple ways to go, and then you find an item and you're not sure where it does or what it does, and then you find a new ability, and all these previous areas you can explore, and they lead to all ththese other areas, and you kind of discover how all the different areas are interconnected. It's just that feeling it's some of the best. It's the best feeling ever in a game, and the Hollow Knight succeeds so well at that. And it really kept me going. It was such an addictive experience for me. I could not put this game down. I could not stop thinking about it. It's one of those rare games where I was actually dreaming about it. I would play it and go to bed, and I'd be dreaming about it and wanting to play it so badly the next day. It's a long game too, especially if you go for all the optional content, which I did most of it, at least most of the stuff I could find and do. It took me 23 hours to clear this game for the first time, which is pretty impressive for a game of this type. And then when you consider it's $10, what a steal! Like, it's just like this game. You have to play it. You have to play it. It's so cheap. It's such a well-designed experience, bosses aside, that if you're a fan of Metroidvania games or Dark Souls games, this game, definitely play it. I like it more than Salt Sanctuary, which is crazy because that was my game of the year that it came out. I'm not sure if it's my game of the year of this year. I think I might still prefer Persona and Nier. The bosses really did drag the game down for me, and it's the one thing that makes me a bit hesitant about replaying this game. It also doesn't have the customization or RPG elements of a Souls game, so I don't know if I would have as much fun replaying this. But that first playthrough is just a total blast. And I guess moving on to finish the review, we'll talk about the visuals and music. I love the look of this game. Gorgeous 2D art. I love the character designs, how everything is an insect. The atmosphere in this game is absolutely terrific, especially once you reach like the Deep Nest area or like the Abyss. The use of color in this game is phenomenal. The way different areas transition from one another, the way the environment will change, the way the color palette changes, and the way the lighting changes is it's absolutely incredible. Just a gorgeous game. I really love the look of it, and especially when combined with the music, which is phenomenal. All the music is basically piano-driven and really kind of like melodic and kind of sad sounding to really fit like the dark, depressing tone of the game. Some of these songs just, I don't know, I could not get them out of my head. The song that plays in the city area is just absolutely spectacular. The song that plays in Dirtmouth I really love. It's like this great song to come back to anytime you have to go back to the hub. The soundtrack is just really moody and just, it's so good. I was really kind of blown away by the soundtrack, and just how it combined with the atmosphere and look of the game is just phenomenal. So that about covers it. Incredible game. I do have minor issues with it. Really, the only major one is the boss is being like Damage Sponge, which is again, that's a pet peeve of mine. Some people might not be actually as bothered by that. I highly recommend this game. But don't miss out on this. Do not. I know it's not super long. You could probably, if you didn't do the optional content, you'd probably beat it in maybe 15 hours. But do the optional content though, and it is one of those games where it's very hard to just rush through it. It's not that type of game. It's a game that rewards exploration and it rewards being thorough. And I love those types of games. Anyways, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.